Wouldn't be a video without sirens. Wouldn't be a dad video without sirens. Ooh, they turned it off. They turned their sirens off. Must be a crime in progress, and he doesn't want to alert the perpetrators. This would be about the place you would turn it off if you were going to the... Whoop, he turned it on again. What? What, little boy? Now little boy's here. Little fat boy. You look bloated. You got gas? They're gonna have to stick a needle in you. Take the gas out. No, you can't get on my lap. Stephanie tried to put you on her lap and you didn't want to go. Huh? You be a good boy. I'm gonna catch some sun. Had to put my jacket on. They said it was 43 degrees this morning, but on my thermometer it was 50, 51. So I don't know where they're getting the temperatures around here from. Where their thermometer is for the news. I was just watching a YouTube show. Ooh, what was that? I think I just heard somebody blow out a flat tire. Huh. All the sound comes from the north this time of year when the cold fronts come through. I was watching a video online. I think it's a lady I subscribed to, I'm not sure, but it showed up today in my YouTube screen. It's a mortician lady with jet black hair. She looks like the lady on NCIS. Is that the one that works in the lab? You guys know who I'm talking about, the one with the tattoos? She looks just like that lady. And she's a real-life mortician in California. And she does videos about, things that people are curious about that morticians do and stuff like that. But today she was talking about a technical word that has to do with the preservation of bodies in cold temperatures. And it's interesting because I saw a video yesterday of this crew in the early 1900s or late 1800s that was going to Antarctica, and the captain and his crew, or a portion of them, perished. And they buried each other in the frozen tundra. And like 100 years later, they dug up one of these bodies, and it was still frozen. And it was in like perfect shape almost. It was very interesting. And they did an autopsy on it. They showed you he still had red hair. And you could see one eye was open and it looked just like a regular eyeball. They x-rayed the guy, did an autopsy. They found out that these people ate canned food that were on the ship. And the cans back then were lined with lead. I think they still do use solder in steel cans if you get canned green beans. I'm not sure if they do, so don't take my word on it, but there's a little seam in there. They used to use lead solder, or a tin solder that's a certain percentage of lead. So these people were suffering from lead poisoning. And it may not have been the actual cause of death, but they were emaciated. This guy weighed 90 pounds. I think they said it was pneumonia is what killed him. But he weighed 90 pounds. He was a little under 6 feet tall, which was tall for back then. Just very interesting. So the mortician today is talking about how bodies are preserved in cold water. She goes back to 1975 at the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald in Lake Superior. and about how that's designated a graveyard and that nobody's permitted to go down to it. And if they are, it has to be a scientific mission or something. But it has to be treated as a graveyard, which means most of the time nobody gets to go down there. And these aren't like thousands and thousands of feet down like the Titanic. They're only like 260, 300 feet down. I mean, somebody with a scuba tank can go down there. And evidently some guy did, and he photographed a body, or he videoed a body. And the part of this before that, maybe I'll put a link to this down below. No, you can't be on my lap. She talks about a wreck from the 1920s. No. So 100 years ago. And in the 1990s, somebody went down there. They found the wreck of this ship, Kampusa or something. And they found a body, and the bodies, even 100 years later, the bodies are essentially intact and pure and preserved. And it's because the water's 32 degrees and there's no bacteria. And the shipwrecks look like they sunk yesterday. It's very interesting. But the bodies, all of the bodies are still down there. And some of the survivors from the first shipwreck in the 1920s made it to an island, but in the Edmund Fitzgerald, all 29, I think it was, people perished. And they're buried down in the wreckage somewhere or along the dirt on the bottom. That's known as the Titanic of the Great Lakes because it was the largest ship, the largest, I guess they hauled ore, and they carried ore, ferried ore, because I guess the steel industry needed the raw materials. Like, it's no coincidence that's where they make cars at, right, in Detroit, because that's up near Lake Superior where they bring this ore in. So these bodies are well preserved. They don't bloat and float up. They're right at the freezing point most of the time, 30 to 34 degrees. And they get coated with some sort of white something or another. And they end up becoming totally preserved. And then she went ahead and described about how in warm temperatures, all of the bacteria that's in your body starts to break down, and it causes your body to bloat, and your body will float to the top. So even, a lot of these boat wrecks, when they call off the search, they'll still go back there a few days later because they know in Florida the bodies will bloat and float to the top. And even if they're tied down with concrete blocks, the guy who was put to death on Florida's death row, he murdered a mother and her 2 teenage girls after raping them. And he tied them to concrete blocks and threw them in Tampa Bay. You guys remember that? The only way they were able to catch this guy is that he wrote an address down for the boat ramp on a piece of paper. These people were from Idaho or Iowa. They had a farm. And he said, let me take you out on the bay to see the city lights at night. So she thinks she's safe with her 2 daughters, right? So that's the only clue they had, and they put it on billboards. This note this guy wrote, they would put it on billboards all over town. I remember when this happened. Finally, somebody said, hey, that looks like so-and-so's handwriting. In a minute, I'm going to remember the guy's name. But it turned out that he was the one that killed the woman and her 2 teenage girls. How horrible. But the thing is, even though he tied them down with concrete blocks, after a few days or a few weeks, their bodies bloated, started decomposing in the warm water, and the blocks and everything, their bodies rose to the top, where they could be identified, you know, they could see there was a body, because there's so much gas and pressure inside. You guys are going to get in trouble. Watching these little tiny birds again, because he's watching them. Certain one morning about 9 o'clock, I get called to an apartment complex, and this is the story. Man, a woman reports her boyfriend, common-law husband basically. Man lives with his girlfriend for 13 years, and they have a 13-year-old daughter together. So they live as man and wife, but they're not married, which in Florida is a common-law marriage. So a friend of his comes down from upstate that he knew in high school, and he tells his girlfriend that he's going to go out with his buddy from high school. You know, spend the night, you know, going to the bars and stuff with his buddy. Well, what he didn't tell his girlfriend was that his buddy was bringing his girlfriend and another girlfriend from high school that knew this man. So there was 2 guys and 2 girls, but the girlfriend didn't know it. The girl, one of the girls that knew the guy from high school, lived at this apartment complex, which was right on the, I'm going to intentionally not give too many details because I want to respect other people's privacy. I'm watching you. I'm watching you. Better leave those birds alone. It's always right around the corner of the building. One of these days I'll come out and there'll be this little clump of greenish feathers, and I'll know he got one of those birds. And it's going to have to grow up in a single parent household. Hopefully it'll teach its babies to be extra wary about blind corners and felines. So the guy goes out with his high school buddy, two women, and one of the women lived in these apartments, which was right on a lake. So about 4 o'clock in the morning, they come back from the bars, and they've all been drinking. So they walk out onto the boat dock behind the apartments, and they decide to go swimming. So all 4 of them jump into the water, and they're laughing, you know, and hollering and stuff. And all of a sudden they realize this guy isn't there. You know, that everybody jumped in the water, and with all the splashing and stuff, they just didn't figure that he was missing for a few minutes or something. But all of a sudden he's gone. And they're like, "Where's Fred?" "I don't know. He jumped in with us, right?" "Yeah." But they're drunk, right? They've been drinking. So he's missing. So the other 3 come out of the water, walk back to the apartment, and go to sleep. Fall asleep. And it was the man's girlfriend that called to report him as missing. And of course I got the call, and she told me who he went out with. And somehow I tracked down this girl's apartment, and sure enough, the guy's there. I tracked down somebody that knew him that said, yeah, he spent the night with this girl at this apartment, blah, blah, blah. So I go there, and they tell me the story. "Yeah, you mean he's not here? You know, Fred's not here?" "Well, Fred was last seen with you guys. You know, his girlfriend's worried about him. Where's he at? You know, what happened to him?" You know, "Well, we went out drinking," and the story comes out. They all jumped in the lake. And he didn't come out of the water. When they all got back up on the dock and went back to crash, he wasn't with them. So for whatever reason, maybe it's just being stupid and drunk, they didn't tell it. They didn't bother to. I think there's more to this, but nobody ever looked into it. It'd have to be some sort of liability, right? or gross negligence. So I call the supervisor, and they bring a detective out to talk to the lady, because now we've kind of narrowed down that it was somewhere between the boat dock, somewhere around the boat dock is where he went missing. Last place he was seen was jumping off the boat dock. So we go looking around, the helicopter comes over to look around the lake, and there's no sight of him. So they call a bloodhound from the prison, and bloodhound comes out, and they're running along the shore, and I'm following the bloodhound, you know, but from a distance, so I can see if they find anything. I'm thinking, you know, in my mind, you know, knowing about animals, that's the best chance we have of finding this guy. It's with the bloodhound. Well, about 100 yards north of the boat dock, the dog starts hitting in the reeds, you know, along the shore, and the handler has to pull him back. He keeps trying to go into the water, and so the fire department gets there with their boat, and they start looking around, and we tell them where the dog was hitting, about 100 yards north of the boat dock near this section of reeds. And the fire department goes over there, and they find the guy, and he's butt naked, and he's floating, his butt facing up. You know, when they found him, I looked up over found a place on shore I could see, and sure enough, his butt was sticking up just at the top of the water. So just enough of him had started to bloat or bacterialize to where he started to float. I guess fat, the gas that's in you, and food, and all sorts of stuff makes your body start to float. And wasn't floating really high, but he was just below the water right there. So we ended up recovering his body. Detectives ended up closing that case as accidental, because I think what had happened is when he jumped into the water, he broke his neck. That the water was only like 18 inches deep, and he must have dove in like head first and evidently snapped his neck and drowned, of course, because he was paralyzed. What? So I've always used this as an example of why it's better sometimes to just stay home rather than go out on a Friday or Saturday night. And I always think if he had stayed home with his girlfriend instead of going out to mess around. And the other people said, yeah, he was kissing on this woman and all this other stuff that was with him that he used to know in high school. So it wasn't just an innocent night out with high school friends. The guy was messing around. So I always thought if he had just stayed home, he would still be alive. And that particular day was the end of his life. You know, going out to party one last time, and it cost him his life. Better to stay home, everyone, than to go out on Friday or Saturday night. And I would think even to the movies, especially with we used to always do the matinees, remember? We would get the matinee price, which was like $3.50 a ticket. And I can't think of too many times we went out late, but I think you guys did. Is that my camera beep? Alright, that's my story for the day. And it all started with this black-haired lady that looks like the lady from NCIS. She's a mortician in California. Hey, I'll put a link to the story that I saw today down below in the description. And tell me if she don't look like that lady on NCIS. And I could be, isn't that the one with the black-haired lady? She works in the lab. She had the tattoos on her neck, remember? Yeah, she looks like that lady. So that's one of those things that I remember still to this day. You know, talk about reliving events in your life. You know, lots and lots of them like that. It's probably PTSD, right? Maybe I can get a disability. Just remember, everybody, stay home if you can. Don't go out Friday and Saturday. Stay with your loved ones. Be a family homebody and not a rambling person. Yeah, think about that guy who was out of Ybor City 2 weekends ago, and he went around back to meet the rap star, and these two guys just whacked him upside the head for no apparent reason. He was just standing there, and somebody was recording it. And then when he fell back and smacked his head on the cement, and they think he's gonna die. You know, if he had just stayed home, he'd still be alive, still be living his life. Sometimes you gotta go out. I guess if you go to the movies or something, that's pretty innocent, but anything other than that, forget it. Just remember that I love you. I'm talking to you. I'm looking at you. That's it from my video for today. Become a homeboy or homegirl. Be a homebody. I love you. God loves you. Together and forever we always will. Stay warm. Stay cold. Stay out of the wind. May God allow us to be reasonably happy in this life. Supremely happy forever with Him in the next. Amen. I have to go see what's going on over there. Might be my neighbor. I love you guys. See you tomorrow. Check out the video down below.